If you go on Amazon.com and search for Power BI, you would find my book in that list. That's been great, but really my labor of love for this year has been my new venture, which is learnpowerbi.com. And that's all about reaching a lot more people than I have in the past, because that truly frustrates me. The pace at which I've been going, which is there are millions of users out there. And I come from an Excel background, kind of a business user. And that's what I feel passionately about, that I want to go find them and shake them by the shoulders and show them there's a better way to do things. So that's me. You can find out more about me on learnpowerbi.com. And you can also check me out on YouTube. If you just go to youtube.com/PowerBI Pro, that's me. Perfect. So let's get into it. And I'm going to start with the story of an underdog. Who doesn't love that, right? Everybody loves comeback stories. And this one is actually about my brother, who is a marketing wizard. He has worked with Hershey's, which was a lot of fun. We got a lot of chocolate samples. Now he's at Georgia Pacific, and we're not that excited about the toilet paper samples, but you know, he's doing great. But he didn't start off that way. He started off at the front desk of a hotel. And you would think, if you would know his life story, that the turning point was when he joined business school, got his business degree, found a job in marketing, never looked back. It was not quite that. I believe that his turning point was actually a very specific sequence of events at the business school. It was not about the business school, not about what he learned there. And this is what happened. When he stepped in there, he was kind of intimidated. He was kind of afraid. There were all these other whiz kids from big name companies, these big four consulting firms and so forth. And you know, he felt a little unsure of himself. But he didn't need to be, because he pretty soon found out that he was head and shoulders above the rest of the crowd because of his people skills. And there's no better place to learn people skills than at the front desk of a hotel, as it turns out. You're dealing with irate customers, you're dealing with staff who doesn't always want to be there. That's where he cut his teeth, and that was his edge. And I believe I was lucky enough to get an edge of my own. And this was back in the day when I was just still kind of finding out Power BI. I was still a code name back then. But I was in the company of some great minds. One of those was Gregory Weber. He's still in Microsoft. Look him up. And he taught me everything that I know about data modeling. And back then, I didn't really care that much. I didn't really know what he was teaching me exactly. But enough of it must have seeped in that I think that's been the biggest difference maker in my career since then. That's what has put me head and shoulders above the crowd. So here I am, just trying to pass it on, pay it forward, right? Let's get into it. What is a Power BI model? And I pulled up this definition from Wikipedia. No, just kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. So, in fact, I love using counterexamples. So let's talk about what is not a Power BI model. What is not data modeling in Power BI? So this is real experiences from some real clients, customers, students of mine. So this person, we jumped on a call, and they said, "Hey, Avi, we're going along fine, but we're stuck at a point, and we have a report." And it's just a dummy screenshot, but he said, "We have a report, and we just need to add one more element to it." So I said, "Okay." So he described the report and so forth, and maybe showed me some kind of a mock-up of the report. And I said, "Great, I get it. Now let's look at your model. Open up your Power BI desktop file, PBIX, and I see something like this in the data view." And I'm like, that looks kind of like your report. Show me the relationship view. And this is what pops up in the relationship view. A single table all by itself. It's heartbreaking, my friends. That is not creating a Power BI model. That's not modeling. You're creating a report. And what's the difference between a report and a model? It's about questions. So a report answers a question which has just been asked. But a data model answers more. Now we all know what happens when we create a report. Somebody says, give me sales year over year by territory. And you go give them that. Give them exactly what they asked for. what happens in the next few seconds? They look at it and say, oh yeah, that's exactly what I asked for. Great, he got it to me. But can you blow it up by like a year, a month? They always have something else. And that's how humans work. But for us, it's going back and churning out another new report, or changing that report, redoing it. But a data model answers the question that has been asked. It answers the question that are going to be asked in the follow-up. It answers the question that you haven't even thought of yet. That's what a data model brings you. Let's take another example. What is not a Power BI model? Again, working with another client, and I jump on a call, and pretty much the first thing I ask them to do is to show me the relationship view. That tells me a lot. And I see something like this. Now, this is from AdventureWorks. Theirs was maybe more complicated. And I'm like, well, okay, I see what's going on here. There was a lot going on here. And then I started asking questions about different tables, about relationships, the dotted lines, all of that stuff. And I realized that what they had done was they had connected to their data source, their data warehouse, and just sucked everything in and let it auto-detect all the relationship. That's not data modeling. That's not creating a Power BI model, at least not my way. So if you have a data warehouse, yeah, those folks are well-intentioned. What they have is very useful, but you don't start off by pulling everything in to your Power BI model. Okay, got it. Okay, so first of all, make me a pinky promise, all right, that you're not going to do those things. You're not going to try to create a report in Power BI. It's not a report. Don't do that. Start with a model. You can do reports later on. And you're not going to just connect and bring everything in and go from there. So where do you start? What I want you to do is I want you to step away from that button. Yeah, step away from that Get Data button. Step away from Power BI Desktop. In fact, step away from your computer. Start on a whiteboard. You start on a whiteboard and you start asking questions. Now, if you have a client you're working with, yeah, bring them in the room. Or maybe you're building this for yourself. I love that about Power BI. It really empowers the business users who are kind of on the front line, who need actionable data to just do it for themselves. Why wait? Why, go begging to somebody and have them add your request in their backlog and maybe it's going to be addressed in 6 months? You don't have to do that. So maybe this is a conversation with yourself. I do that all the time. That's fine. So you're going to start asking questions and you're going to ignore 95% of the answers you're going to hear from the customer, the client. Because a lot of what they're going to tell you is going to be from that report specific view. I believe, somehow we've been conditioned over time, but we can't help ourselves. We just think very narrow, and I want you to think big. And to think big, I want you to listen deeper. I want you to dig a little deeper. And I want you to go beyond the report that needs to be created to try to first understand what is the business process that you're trying to measure, trying to track. That's step one. And that is going to be your data table. Okay, it's going to be your data table. So business process is something tangible, something that you can kind of see, feel, touch often. It's usually not something abstract. So it could be a sales transaction, somebody swiping that credit card. That's when the sale happened. Something was shipped from the warehouse. Somebody went around and did inventory. Somebody picked up a phone call from a customer and answered them. Could be a whole ton of different things. You started a random marketing campaign. You click the start button on that. Paid some money for that. So it's some business process you're trying to track, and your data table is going to have numbers about it. Interesting numbers that you would later want to see, slice and dice. And next, you ask the who, the what, the where, the when, the how. And that's going to give you your lookup tables. Let's stick with a simple example. Let's say it's a sales data table. So you ask, well, who bought it? Who was purchasing? Okay, that's the customer. So that's going to be kind of your customer table right there. Well, what did they buy? That's going to be your product table. That's a lookup table. Where did they buy? Maybe that's store. When did they buy? That's your calendar table. How did they buy? How is kind of a catch-all. But did they use discounts or something else? You can capture that. How did they pay? That's going to be your first model. So a little bit more about data versus lookup table. Let me see how much if I can kind of explain this. And I love this stuff. I talk a lot about this kind of inside my course and with my students. So a data table, once you have done this exercise, and once you kind of end up with it, again, data table represents a business process. The lookup table is a who, what, where, when, how. Data tables are going to be tall and skinny. They're going to be tall because they're capturing information. You're capturing information about a business process, and the business process is running in day in and day out. Sales, well, if you have 10,000 sales transactions this year, maybe you're going to have 100,000 next year, 1,000,000. And of course, you're going to keep adding them every year. So inevitably, it grows tall, it keeps growing tall. But it's skinny. You don't want, and well, if you're doing it right, you're not going to have a ton of columns in a data table. If you end up with a ton of columns, maybe there's a lookup table hiding in there, which you need to just push it up to a lookup table. The lookup tables on the other side are short but wide, short and squat. Right? So they're short because, let's say, if you have sales, if you have 1,000,000 sales transactions, you're not going to have 1,000,000 customers. That's just silly. You're not going to have 1,000,000 products. You're not going to have 1,000,000 dates, right? You're going to have, I don't know, 10,000 customers, maybe a few hundred products, maybe 5 years of dates in your calendar table. So they're short. But why are they wide? Why are they wide? Well, they're wide because the lookup tables are what lets you slice and dice your data in all these different ways. They're the ones who got it. Okay. Yeah, they're the ones who. Oh, okay. Maybe I'll say. They're the ones who let you slice and dice your data, and we're humans, and we love these kind of text attributes. We love kind of hierarchies, city, state, zips, country, and all that. And that's what lets us slice and dice it. That's, in a way, kind of adds, kind of the insight for you. So it's okay to be squat. It's okay to go wide. Don't go crazy, but yeah, they're going to be wider compared to the data tables. And lastly, data tables is going to be very number heavy, but lookup tables is going to have a lot of words. I do want to shout out to one special table. So we talked about the who, what, where, when, how. Well, one of those is special. So if you talk about who, it would be different for everybody out there. The who, you're going to have your own customer list, your own customer attributes. The what, if you're tracking products, again, your own product list, your own product attributes. But when it comes to where, the calendar table, it's kind of the same for everybody for the most part. And that's why I'm gonna, it's something that you just kind of need to do it once. So if you head over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Power BI Pro, the last video is actually about that. So I felt it was a good kind of a segue. So you can go ahead and grab that. It's just something really easy that you can kind of download, and you can just cut, copy, paste inside your model and use it. So keep that mental note. So here we are in our process for designing our Power BI model. We have created a basic model with data and lookup tables. And if I didn't mention it earlier, your first model, ideally, you should only be focusing on one data table. Because remember, data table represent business processes. So this is going to keep you focused, only focused on one business process. Don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to solve everything at once. Power BI is not about, those big projects where somebody would walk in, maybe a team of consultants, and ask you for $1 million or millions of dollars and say, yeah, we're going to have it in 6 months. And it's never going to be done in 6 months. Those days are over. Power BI is agile BI, so move in short, quick bursts. This first iteration, it can be a week. It can be 2 days. That's the time span I'm talking about. But you have a basic model with data and lookup tables, and you were able to get there because you focused on one business process, one data table. What's the next step? Well, now you need to bring it to life. So now you need to take what you have conceptually on the whiteboard and just do the same thing in Power BI by connecting with the data sources. Now here's something where we can use some wisdom. And there's nobody wiser that I know than Mike Tyson. Well, I don't know, that's debatable. But he did have something really smart to say. He said, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. And that's so true, my friends. And I know this is what's going to happen to you. So you're going to have this plan, of going from this to life, bringing it to life, and your data is going to punch you in the face, because real data is always messy. It's not AdventureWorks, it's not Contoso, it's not Fabricam. Real data is messy. But Power BI gives you a tool to punch right back, and that's the query editor. So query editor is where you bring your model to life. You design it on the whiteboard, but when you go to your data, it's not going to look like what you have on the whiteboard. But you're going to use the query editor to shape it that way. Please don't leave it for later. So I actually just got off the call and I was talking to students, and they're like, well, you can do it in DAX, and well, sometimes you can do it quicker in DAX, but the right way to do it is to do the clean shape transform inside your query editor. That's the tool for you to let you bring your model to life and punch back real data. What's the next step? Where do you go from there? Now it's time to add the magic. And the magic in Power BI is in the measures. And the magic is the define once, use everywhere. So if you're used to the old world, which I was used to, I was living in kind of the world in Excel where I had a spaghetti of formulas, those days are over. Because the magical measures, you just define them once and use them everywhere. You define something once and you can slice and dice it any which way you want. That's the magic of measures. You're going to create some basic measures and you're going to create some basic reports. And again, think quick iterations. Think, yeah, maybe next week you're done with the measures, done with the basic reports. What next? So you can kind of go two different ways from here. One path is create more measures. And I used to call them more complex measures, but I've stopped saying that. So at the beginning of this year, I kind of went solo. I worked for myself. And one thing I've learned, I've felt, is that your thoughts are really powerful. They shape your reality. As long as you think something is hard, as long as you keep saying DAX is hard, AM is hard, it's always going to be hard for you. So I choose my words carefully. So they're not complex measures. For one, because if you do it the right way, so the way I do it, and I'm not that smart at DAX, the way I do it is I break it down into small problems and build it up with these small measures. So I build basic measures, then combine them to build not more complex, but more awesome measures. That's the word I want you to use, more awesome measures. Now you may be asking, that's great. I really wonder if there was an index to measure the awesomeness of measure the awesomeness of measures. Yeah, there is. I'm glad you asked. So awesome, my friend, is actionable. And again, think Agile BI, think bursts. It's a journey. It's a journey. You're not going to get there tomorrow, but that's the fun. That's the power of Power BI, that you can kind of iterate quickly. But you would find yourself moving forwards towards making your measures more actionable. Your first report might be sales year over year. Sales this year, last year, very cool. And maybe something which either you couldn't have done earlier, or couldn't have done it as easily, couldn't have made it as interactive as Power BI does. So it's really cool. It's a great first step. But if you think about it, it's not very actionable. And we actually kind of went through this journey with one of my clients. Maybe the next step you take is by every sales agent, every salesperson you have, you show them the clients that they're assigned, the accounts they're assigned, and show them the top 5 accounts that have had the biggest drops. Now, that can be in terms of sales units, that can be in terms of sales dollars, that can be in terms of percentage drop from the prior year, or something else, some other metric which is important to you. And you put their information right next to that. And hey, they can just pick up the phone and call that customer and say, hey, what's going on? Why are the orders down? This is what I'm seeing. That is actionable. So you're going to slowly move towards that. Keep digging, keep creating more awesome measures. The other path would be add more data tables. Actually, I want to rename it. I'll call it bring more friends. So I started off by talking about focusing on one data table, because that is a business process, and I want your first model at least to focus on one business process. But once you've done that, you're ready to move on and bring more friends in, bring more data tables in. So what is that going to look like? Well, so you're going to have your basic model. So we have our sales, customer, product, store calendar, the data table, the lookup table, and you're going to bring more in. Let's say we bring in support. So this is, again, somebody picking up the phone, answering support calls. And this is the beauty about doing it this way, that once you bring it in, so sales, of course, is going to be kind of linked to all of these. But once you bring in a new data table, it's often just plug and play. So you're going to bring in support, and yeah, support is going to have a date. It may not have a store, it may have a product. So you hook that. It'll have a customer. So you will just hook it into existing lookup tables. Very rarely, sometimes you would, but very rarely would you need to add more lookup tables. So lookup tables are these durable entities. These durable entities which are kind of pervasive across your business. The who, what, where, when, how often do not change as you go from one business process to another. It's the same product list, it's the same customer list, it's the same calendar, of course. So you can just plug it in, and it doesn't have to be plugged into everything. Notice here, support, maybe it's unrelated to store. I mean, in some scenario, maybe we're capturing store, maybe we're not. Right, so it doesn't have to hook up to everything, but you just plug and play. And now this is what bringing in more friends, bringing in more data tables in your model is going to let you do. For one, now you can, earlier you had all these beautiful reports and dashboards around your sales data, around that business process. And now that you have another business process, you can create a whole rich set of reports around support. How many calls duration, blah, 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 how many calls were hung up, all of that. So you have one set of rich reports around sales and another set of rich reports around support. But you don't have to stop there. You can put them on the same graph. You can put them side by side, see what correlations are there, right? See what connections exist across these two. What I really love are hybrid measures. Now, I've said it before, the magic in Power BI is in the measures. Magic is in the measures. So now we can define a hybrid measures which goes across data tables. So we can define something like this. Let's say support calls per 1,000 units sold. And it's going to be a simple formula. It's not going to be rocket science. It's going to be really, really simple. This divided by that, that's it. But if you think about it, this is mind-blowing stuff. Because the numerator is coming from one table and the denominator is coming from another table. And again, you have the magic of measures on your side. Magic of measures. That is, define once, use everywhere. Once you define it, you can slice and dice it any which way you want. You can take that metric, support calls per 1,000 units sold, and slice and dice it by customer, by product, by store. Maybe you slice and dice it by manufacturing plant. Which was the manufacturing plant that created this product? And then you see, plant A has 10 support calls per 1,000 units sold, but the other plants B and C are less than 5. That's actionable data. Now you can pick up the phone and call that plant manager. Say, hey, what's going on? Actionable, awesome, perfect. I said that. And sometimes, so I have been using Power BI for a long time now that I often forget. I've forgotten pieces of the old world and how painful they were. So it took one of my students to remind me of what was a common way, a very common way to do these things. And I call them side table deductions, or STDs for short. So you would have one data table, kind of sales, and you would create a pivot off of it. You would have another data table, support, and you would create a pivot off of that. And then you would create these measures, these deductions or formulas onto the side of these tables. And boy, this is not the magical measures we've been talking about. It's not define once, use everywhere. And right here in this screenshot, I don't know, there are probably like 20, 30 different formulas. and they're extremely fragile. Or you can break them by slightly changing the shape. Forget about adding it, I don't know, a month or a year or something like that. You collapse one thing, and now the formulas are off. They're not working right. And forget that, you can break it without even touching it, just by refreshing it. So you wouldn't touch anything in the report. All you would do is say, hey, everything was working, and you would just maybe have a scheduled refresh. And this is what happens. Suddenly the sales side gets cruiser bikes. Maybe you started selling a new product, and that pops up on that side. And guess what? Support calls, it doesn't show up. Maybe it doesn't have any support calls yet. Maybe it's just a test product. It's never going to show up in the support calls. But now, not all our formulas, but anything down from bikes is wrong. It's comparing apples to oranges. And of course, this would probably feed some PowerPoint deck somewhere, and you're just feeding garbage. You're feeding, garbage information to your management. God knows what kind of action they're going to take. So this was the old world of STDs, or side table deductions. So I say no to STD. And remember, magic is in the measures. Remember, Power BI is Agile BI, so think iterations. Boy, that went quicker than I thought. But hey, maybe that was a good plan. We had talked about leaving a lot of time for questions. So yeah, Q&A. Chuck, guide us through. Okay.
There aren't a ton of questions. We've been actually answering them in situ. There are some questions about, is there a development team for India? Actually, I'm going to scoot over here because you changed it from this microphone to this microphone at some point. And let's see if we can change it back. But what we're going to do is we're going to alt-tab back. Oh, you don't have the YouTube link. So actually, I'm trying to think of the best way. There aren't questions at this point. So why don't we go ahead and wrap up? And what we'll do is me and you will actually triage any of them that come in later in the Q&A panel, and we'll actually answer them now. So if people want to see more about this, like you were talking about who, where, what, when, and somebody wanted to know more information about the who, where would they get more information from you as far as these best practices?
Yeah, I think the best way to get started is to check out my YouTube channel. So youtube.com/PowerBI Pro. And if you go to learnpowerbi.com/bonus, you can grab what's essentially the first training module out of my complete training program. So the first module, and that's just 2 hours of video, a lot of step-by-step instructions. So both of those are good resources for people to kind of continue on this path.
At one point you were doing office hours. Are you still doing those? Or
I'm still doing that, and I have moved those over to my YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, I call it Talk Power BI, and you would see kind of upcoming events. If you subscribe, it'll notify you. There's a set reminder or some button out there you can use. So yeah, that's I run those through my YouTube. Usually it's at Fridays 9 a.m. I believe the next one is maybe October 6th.
Okay.
Friday.
October 6th. I will certainly put it on my tweet. And October 6th, I will not be able to join you. I will actually be in San Francisco for the World Power BI Tour. So if you're in San Francisco or Chicago or Sydney, those are the cities that we still have yet on the tour. And Chicago, there's no room to get in, but San Francisco and Sydney, I think you can still get a seat at this point. Otherwise, my name is Charles Sterling, sitting here with
Avi Singh.
And I want to thank you very much for joining us on another one of these Power BI webinars. I'm going to go ahead and go back into my office and close this off. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, folks.